My dad traded me for a pool table. It sounds like a joke, but it's the stark, ugly truth of how I, 16M, ended up sleeping in a glorified closet for 6 months while his new, shiny family thrived. Everyone kept telling me I was being a selfish, hormonal teenager, but the cold reality of that storage room finally made me see the truth I've been avoiding for years. My parents split when I was 10. It was messy, the kind of messy where I learned to recognize the specific sound of a slamming car door and what it meant for the next few hours of silence or shouting. They settled into an uneasy 50-50 custody agreement, and my life became a weekly pilgrimage between two different worlds. My mom's apartment was quiet, filled with the scent of her vanilla candles and the constant, low-grade hum of her anxiety. My dad's place was louder, more chaotic, and for a long time, it felt like an adventure. When I was 13, my dad met Cassandra. She was all sharp edges and expensive perfume, with a smile that never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me. Within a year, they were married, and our weekend adventures slowly morphed into me watching them be a couple on the couch. Then, when I was 15, Cassandra got a big promotion that required moving to a city 4 hours away. The 50-50 custody became impossible. My dad sat me down, his hand on my shoulder, and told me it was only temporary. "We'll see each other all the time, buddy," he promised. "Every holiday, and you can spend the whole summer with us. It's a great opportunity for all of us." All of us clearly didn't include me. The visits became less and less frequent. A weekend once every 2 months turned into once every 3, then only on major holidays. The summer visit got shortened to 2 weeks because they were busy settling in. I'd hear laughter in the background when I called, the sound of a life I was no longer a part of. My mom tried to compensate, but I could see the sadness in her eyes, a mixture of pity and her own lingering anger towards him. Then, last fall, the bombshell dropped. They were moving back. My dad called me, his voice booming with an excitement I hadn't heard in years. "We found a house, Liam. A real house with a backyard and everything. And it has 3 bedrooms. One of them is yours. We can go back to how it was." The hope that burst in my chest was painful, like a muscle that hadn't been used in too long. A room. My own room in his house. It felt like a reinstatement, a confirmation that I still belonged. We talked about it for hours over the next few weeks. He sent me pictures of the empty room, and I spent nights sketching out layouts, saving images of posters, a new desk, a specific kind of LED light strip I knew he'd roll his eyes at. My mom, though hesitant, agreed to revise the custody agreement. We'd try a 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off schedule. I was ecstatic. It felt like I was getting a piece of my family back. The day they moved in, I was practically vibrating with anticipation. My mom dropped me off, and my dad gave me a hearty, backslapping hug at the door. Cassandra offered a tight, perfunctory smile. The house was nice, bigger than I'd imagined. The tour was a blur of beige walls and unpacked boxes until we reached the end of the hallway. "And this," my dad said, swinging the door open with a flourish, "is your room." It was perfect. It had a large window that looked out into the backyard, a decent-sized closet. I could already picture my bed against the far wall, my desk under the window. "It's amazing," I breathed, my voice cracking a little. "When can I start bringing my stuff over?" The silence that followed was heavy and immediate. My dad and Cassandra exchanged a look, one of those married people conversations that happens entirely with their eyebrows. My stomach dropped. "Well, Liam, about that," my dad began, rubbing the back of his neck. "There's been a slight change of plans." Cassandra jumped in, her voice smooth as glass. "We've decided that since you'll only be here half the time, and you'll be off to college in a couple of years, it makes more sense to use this room for something else." "Something else," I echoed, feeling stupid. My mother is getting on in years, Cassandra continued, and her apartment building is being sold. She needs a place to stay. Permanently. This room is perfect for her. I stared at them, my brain refusing to process the words. But you promised. You said it was mine. And we'll still see you just as much, my dad said, his tone artificially bright. You can sleep on the pull-out couch in the living room. It's really comfortable. I've tested it myself. It'll be like a big sleepover every time you're here. The pull-out couch, in the living room, where everyone would walk through to get to the kitchen, where I'd have zero privacy, where I'd be a guest, a temporary visitor, not a son with his own space. The sketches I'd drawn, the furniture I'd picked out, the hope I'd let myself feel. It all crumbled to dust in that moment. No, I said, my voice quiet but firm. That's not what we agreed on. Liam, don't be difficult, my dad said, his smile slipping. This is a practical decision for the family. The family. The words were a physical blow. I was no longer part of that unit. I was an inconvenience to be managed, a logistical problem to be solved with a sofa bed. I didn't say another word. I pulled out my phone, texted my mom, "Can you pick me up now?" and walked out of the house to wait on the curb. I ignored my dad's calls from the doorway. When my mom arrived, she took one look at my face and didn't ask any questions. The car ride home was silent, thick with a shared, familiar disappointment. For the next month, I went fully no contact. I ghosted my dad. I blocked his number, his social media. He showed up at my school once, but I was in class, and my teacher, bless her, told him I couldn't be disturbed. He started calling my mom, which he absolutely despised doing, and she'd relay the messages with a sigh. He just wants to talk, Liam. He's your father. But I was done. The hurt had calcified into a hard, cold ball of anger in my chest. It wasn't just about the room. It was about every missed birthday, every shortened visit, every broken promise that had piled up over the years. The room was just a final, undeniable proof. So, one night, I unblocked him long enough to send a long, brutally honest text. I detailed every time I felt like an afterthought, a burden. I told him he'd made me feel unwanted, and that his new family had clearly taken my place. I ended it with, "Do not contact me again. I don't have a father anymore." Then I re-blocked him and blocked his entire side of the family, for good measure. The fallout was nuclear. My mom woke me up at 6 a.m., her face pale. "Liam, what did you do?" Her phone had been blowing up all night. My dad's sisters, his brother, even my cousins, people I hadn't spoken to in years, were flooding her inbox with angry, insulting messages. They called me an ungrateful brat, a manipulative liar. They said I was trying to break up my dad's marriage. My dad himself had sent a long, guilt-tripping email to my mom, saying I'd shattered his heart. The worst were the messages from Cassandra, which were venomous attacks on my mom, accusing her of turning me against them. I felt sick. I hadn't expected this. I'd expected silence, maybe a few angry texts from my dad, not a full-fledged harassment campaign from his entire clan. The guilt was immediate and crushing. I dragged my mom into this, and she was now taking fire for my decision. Maybe I was too harsh, I mumbled, showing her some of the nastier messages from my cousins that had slipped through on Instagram before I blocked them. My mom, to her credit, scowled at the screen. "No, they're out of line. But, Liam, you can't just cut people off without a conversation. He's still your dad." She talked to him later that day and arranged a family meeting for the following evening after school. She told me I had to go, that I had to at least hear him out. I refused, digging my heels in. The thought of sitting in that house with Cassandra and her mother made me feel physically ill. "You're going, Liam," she said, her voice taking on that steely tone that meant business. If you don't, I'm taking your phone and your laptop indefinitely. It was a low blow. My laptop was my lifeline for school, for my hobbies, for my sanity. I felt trapped. I was being forced to negotiate my own feelings under threat. The next day, after school, she drove me to my dad's house. I felt like a prisoner being transported to my own execution. I had a speech prepared in my head, a list of my grievances I was determined to lay out calmly and clearly. When we walked in, I expected it to be just my dad. It wasn't. The atmosphere was tense. My mom lingered at the door, speaking in hushed, urgent tones with my dad, while I was directed to the dining room. There, seated at the table like a tribunal, were Cassandra and her mother, Brenda. Brenda was not the frail, sweet old lady one might picture. She was in her late 50s, with a sharp, weathered face and a permanent look of dissatisfaction. She was the kind of person who described herself as a handful, like it was a badge of honor. They both glared at me as I sat down. I pulled out my phone, pretending to be engrossed in something, but I could feel their stares burning into me. It was pure, unadulterated hostility. Finally, my dad came in and sat down. My mom was gone. "Where's Mom?" I asked, a spike of panic jolting through me. "She left. We thought it would be better if it was just family," he said dismissively. My blood ran cold. She'd abandoned me here. My dad launched into his rehearsed apology. "Son, I'm so sorry you felt that way. But you have to understand, Brenda's situation was desperate. She'd already given notice on her apartment. We had to give her the room." He then proceeded to list Brenda's myriad problems. How her jobs never worked out. How life was so hard for her. It was a parade of excuses. They all took turns talking, and it became a chorus of, "We're sorry you're upset, but you're being dramatic and selfish." They were gaslighting me, trying to make their betrayal my fault for having a normal emotional reaction to it. I'd had enough. "This isn't about the room," I interrupted, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. "It's about you constantly breaking your promises. It's about you choosing everyone else over me, every single time." I brought up the harassment from his family. Cassandra let out a derisive snort. "Harassment? Don't be so dramatic. Those messages were for your mother, not you." We got into a heated argument, her voice rising as she defended her family's right to verbally assault my mom. I realized I was fighting a losing battle. They were a united front, and I was the outsider causing trouble. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I'm not doing this. I'm not reconciling. If I have to talk to you in the future, I will, but I don't want a relationship with you. We haven't had one in years anyway." I looked directly at my dad. "When is my mom coming back?" "She's not. Not until Monday. You're staying the weekend, Liam. We need to work this out." Staying? The weekend? In this house of hostility? Panic seized me. I shook my head, backing away from the table. "No, I'm not staying here." I turned and walked out the front door, my heart hammering against my ribs. I didn't stop until I was a block away, sitting on a bus stop bench. I called and texted my mom for an hour straight. Nothing. No answer. Her phone went straight to voicemail. The sun was starting to set, and a cold dread settled in my stomach. I was stranded. Swallowing my pride, I called my best friend Jake. I explained the situation, my voice cracking. Without a moment's hesitation, he said, "Give me the address. I'm on my way." 20 minutes later, his beat-up car pulled up. I climbed in, flooded with a wave of relief so strong it almost brought me to tears. His mom, a kind, no-nonsense woman named Maria, told me I could stay the whole weekend. I texted my mom where I was, but again, no response. I was numb, a confusing mix of white-hot anger and a deep, hollowing sadness. I had no idea what was happening or why my mom had left me there. The following week was a new kind of hell. When I finally went home, my mom was cold and distant. A few days later, we got into a massive argument over dinner. I made the mistake of asking her why she left me at my dad's. She exploded. "I am not your punching bag, Liam. I will not be interrogated in my own home." And with that, she confiscated my phone and my laptop. I begged her, explaining that all my schoolwork was on there, that I needed it for assignments. She didn't care. The next day at school was humiliating. I had to borrow a school Chromebook, which I couldn't take home, meaning I couldn't do my homework. My teachers were confused and concerned. Eventually, I had to tell them the truth, my face burning with shame. One of them emailed my mom. That evening, my mom presented her twisted deal. She'd give me the laptop back for 1 hour after school, for homework only. If I agreed to her new rule, she would no longer buy almond milk. It was such a bizarre, petty punishment. I'm lactose intolerant, and almond milk was the one thing I could have with cereal or in my coffee. It felt like she was intentionally targeting a small, specific piece of my comfort. I agreed because I had no choice. For a few days, I followed the rules, using my single-hour laptop time frantically to complete my work. Then, on Friday, she went to the browser history and saw I'd log into Spotify for a few minutes during my allotted time. She hadn't explicitly forbidden it, but she used it as an excuse to revoke my privileges again. The fight that ensued was the worst one yet. It escalated until, after I'd gone to take a shower, I came back to find her and her boyfriend, Gary, trying to unscrew the hinges on my bedroom door. I saw red. "What are you doing?" I yelled. "You've lost your privacy until you can learn to respect me," she screamed back. Gary stood behind her, nodding. "Your mother's right, Liam. This is her house." I felt a fundamental snap inside me. The person who was supposed to protect me was actively trying to dismantle the last vestiges of my safe space. "Fine," I shouted. "If I'm such a burden, I'll leave. I'll find somewhere else to stay." "You are not leaving this house," my mom yelled. "If you want to go somewhere, you can go to your father's. Those are your only two options." We were at a stalemate, screaming in the hallway. Eventually, I retreated to my room, slamming what was left of my unhinged door. I put on my headphones, trying to block out the world, to calm the storm raging inside me. An hour later, my mom came in. Her anger had been replaced by a cold, resolved calm that was somehow worse. "Go to the living room. Your father is here." Confused and wary, I went. There he was, standing in our living room like he owned the place. My mom, and he had clearly been talking. "Pack a bag, Liam," my dad said. "You're coming with me for the weekend." "No, I'm not," I said, my voice flat. "Yes, you are," my mom interjected. "We've spoken. The custody agreement is still in place. You are going." I looked between them. These two people who had created me and were now collaborating in my misery. I felt a profound sense of betrayal. They had teamed up. I was outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Seeing no other way out, I packed a bag, seething with a quiet, volcanic rage. My mom handed me my phone and laptop bag. A plan formed in my mind. I'd get in the car, and as soon as we got to my dad's, I called Jake again and run. But my dad was one step ahead. As he pulled out of our driveway, he said, his voice chillingly calm, "Just so we're clear, Liam, if you try to run away from my house, I will call the police. I will report you as a runaway minor. They will bring you back, and there will be consequences. And if you try it, I will box up all the stuff you left at my house and sell it. Do you understand?" The threat was effective. The police? A permanent record? Losing the few belongings I still cherished? I was trapped, completely and utterly trapped. We arrived at his house late. Everyone was asleep. He gestured to the living room couch. It's a pull-out. Sheets are in the hall closet. Then he went to his room and closed the door. I looked at the couch. I had no idea how to pull it out. I couldn't find the remote for the TV. I was alone in the dark, silent living room of a house that was not my home. I ended up sleeping on the couch itself, using my backpack as a pillow, my laptop bag on the floor beside me. I didn't sleep much. The next morning, my dad, Cassandra, and Brenda were at the breakfast table. They didn't ask how I slept. Since you're going to be here on the weekends, my dad said, as if discussing a chore roster, we've cleared out the storage room off the garage. You can keep your things in there when you're not here, and you can hang out in there when you want privacy. You'll still sleep on the couch, though. They showed me the room. It was a concrete-floored cell about the size of a large walk-in closet, lined with metal shelving holding Christmas decorations and old boxes. It smelled of dust and gasoline. There was a single bare light bulb hanging from the ceiling and one electrical outlet. It was a storage room. They had literally put me in storage. That became my routine. Every Friday, my mom would force me to go with my dad. I'd spend the weekend in that storage room, only emerging for meals or when summoned. My dad would text me when dinner was ready. They mostly ignored me, and I was happy to be ignored. I slept on the uncomfortable couch, ate my meals in silence, and retreated to my concrete-walled closet. I felt like a ghost in their perfect family portrait. He told me this would be the arrangement until I left for college. I had no say. My mom was complicit. The two people who were supposed to be my safe harbor had marooned me on an island of profound loneliness. But that storage room, as awful as it was, became my cocoon. The numbness slowly hardened into a fierce, cold resolve. I stopped crying. I stopped feeling angry. I started planning. I used my 1 hour of laptop time not for homework, but for researching scholarships, grants, and student loans. I reached out to college admissions counselors. I worked on my applications with a single-minded determination I never knew I possessed. I was counting down the days. The storage room wasn't my prison. It was the evidence I needed to never look back. It was a final, undeniable proof that I was on my own. And that knowledge, as painful as it was, became my fuel. I was going to build a life for myself, a life where my worth wasn't determined by a spare room or a pull-out couch, a life where I would never, ever be an option instead of priority. The next time I walked out of that house, I vowed it would be for good.